Agroforestry. Our role, together with the RYSS team, is to look for the evidence. What is the evidence that supports the claims that natural farming can not only meet climate goals, but much more importantly, meet the goals of farmers to increase their income while having a softer footprint on Earth. So before I get into the preliminary results that we are starting to get, I want to say a couple of things. ICRAF works all around the world in many, many such projects, but it is rare for us to be welcomed by a team, a group trying out new approaches in the way that we were welcomed in Andhra Pradesh, because what they told us was that they were open to science, helping them to adapt and modify their approaches. And indeed, in the 3 to 4 years that we've been associated with them, we have seen great innovation. And so this openness to evidence, to science, and the ability to support farmer innovation is indeed one of the great strengths of this program. And that I can say, without having the statistical data to back me up at this point, although we will be gathering it, that is one of the great accomplishments of this program. And I'm coming from COP26, where universally everybody is decrying the lack of funding for adaptation. Well, natural farming, and you saw this in the film as well, is definitely a pathway to adaptation, and I can say this. Our studies so far reveal that greenhouse gas emissions can be reduced between 30 and 60%. And this is just the first study on this. Rosenstock et al. Have published this as a result of natural farming. Less in paddy rice, more in dryland crops. So we are seeing very clearly preliminary evidence for greenhouse gas emissions reductions. We are also anticipating improvements to soil organic carbon, the ability of soil to hold nutrients and water, which is crucial for the fertility of these programs. Our work has perhaps helped Vijay and team to expand horizons beyond field and farm to landscape. So what we are doing at the moment in 3 landscapes is setting up landscape level assessments of the program to understand what happens in the matrix within which agriculture exists. What happens in the film, you would have seen rocky outcrops, you would have seen areas that are common lands. So how do we manage the landscape as a whole? And indeed, RYSS and A.P.C.N.F, as it is now called, expanded their horizon to include this. So although we don't have results from this, this is the first program that I know of that is starting to take a full landscape view to agroecology and not just focus on what's happening on a particular farmer's field. The third point I want to make is scale. Already Vijay has talked about going to all farmers in the state, but the scale is not just about reaching people everywhere. The scale is about understanding at nested scales how resilience can emerge as a result of the interaction of farmers managing their fields, managing the value chains, and supporting each other through the social capital that you no doubt heard from Vijay about, particularly the social capital in the self-help groups. So we are seeing high rates of adoption. We are seeing a lot of curiosity among farmers. What we have not yet seen is a full saturation. So one of the things that we are going to be studying is how these innovations spread from farms to villages, through villages to the landscape, and then through the state. And what happens as a consequence to this to water, which is critically important, to carbon and other ecosystem services associated with biodiversity. At the same time, the results that we have seen and the data that we have analyzed suggest that farmer income can go up by 100% in some cases. And this is before we think about anything to do with value addition or any form of certification or standardization. So the challenges, I think, are still in farmer hesitancy, in the existing subsidy structure that supports irrigation based on groundwater extraction, subsidies for pesticides and fertilizers, which makes doing the wrong thing too easy and too cheap. But we are optimistic in the next year or two that as we start understanding what works and what works best in a specific context, the social capital and the organizational structure will allow for innovation to spread right through the state, whether we're dealing with irrigated agriculture or we're dealing with dryland agriculture or indeed upland agriculture where trees and woody species play a much larger role. My last point is that the shift, as you saw in the film, to maintaining green cover across the landscape is going to be a critical component, not just in reducing volatilization of greenhouse gases from the soil, but also for maintaining the fertility of that soil and the humidity of the soil. So it is early days for us. We are a year and a half into the setting up the evidence base, which includes using our land degradation surveillance framework to set a baseline, a biophysical baseline right across the state. We have 800 square kilometers of sample sites done and another 1,000 planned. We have socioeconomic baselines set right across the state in thousands of households, which allow us to look at midpoint and at an endpoint in 2 years' time, how adoption across the state is taking place, and much more importantly, what is being adopted, how is it being adapted, and what is needed in order to continue to support the innovation. So let me stop there and just see whether there's any questions. I'm sorry, because of sitting in a lounge, I can't offer you any slides or data, but you'll just have to believe the words coming out of my mouth.